I'm going to show you how to make one of the bunting panels from the super cute bunny runner and bunting set from Kreative Kiwi. For this I'm going to be using a 4x4 hoop, 2 layers of wash away stabiliser, a selection of threads, 2 with matching bobbins, some pins with heads on them, my Squizzors, a thread unpicker, and my fabrics and batting cut to size. You'll find a link to this design in the video description below. Today I'm going to be showing you how to do fringed flowers, so make sure that you watch all the way through to see how they're done. We're going to start off by hooping our 2 layers of wash away stabiliser. So place the stabiliser over the outer frame, insert the inside frame, and then we're going to pin around the top edge of our hoop, and that's going to prevent our stabiliser from being pulled down between the 2 hoop pieces. So take a pin, rest it on top of the inside hoop frame, push it through your stabiliser, bring it round and back through the stabiliser again, and that will anchor it. You're going to do that on all 4 sides, and the larger your hoop, the more pins you will use. Load file Bunting 4 into your machine. Load your thread colour for the sky fabric as well. Then you're going to pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 1, and that's going to give us our placement outline for our batting. Place your batting over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. Trim away the excess batting from around the edge of the stitch line, taking care not to cut your stitches. Place your fabric for the sky over the top square. Make sure that this edge comes this side of this stitch line as well, and tape it in place. Making sure that you got your thread colour for the sky quilting loaded into your machine. We're now going to stitch round number 3, and that's going to secure your fabric as well as quilt it. We're now going to place our grass fabric for this area here. So place your fabric face down over this stitch line here. Make sure that it overlaps. And tape it in place. Load your thread colour for the grass into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 4, and that's going to do a line of stitching to secure the fabric. We're now going to trim away some of this excess fabric this side of this stitch line, just leaving about 1/4 of an inch. And that removes the bulk. We're now going to flip this fabric down, but before I do I'm just going to trim off a little bit of the excess here so that it doesn't get in the way of taping it. So pull your fabric down and finger press the join and secure it in place with a little bit of tape. You're now going to pop this into your machine and stitch round number 5, and that's going to secure it, and it's also going to stitch the grass detail as well. So make sure that you've got your thread colour for that loaded into your machine before you do so. Load your thread colour for the bunny's shadow into your machine, and then stitch round number 6, and I'm going with grey. We're now going to stitch round number 7, and that's going to give us our placement outline for our bunny fabric. So load your thread colour for your bunny into your machine and then stitch round number 7. I'm staying with the grey for a minute so that you can see what I'm stitching. We're now going to place our fabric for the bunny over the outline, but I want to talk to you a little bit about different fabrics. If you're using a long piled fabric such as a faux fur, you're going to place it over the outline, and you're going to need a piece of solvy topper, which is a clear plastic type wash away stabilizer, to place over the top, and that will stop your foot getting caught up in the pile as it stitches. I'm not going to be using a long fur on this because, to be quite truthful, it's too small. It's fine on the 5x7 and up, but for the 4x4 you're better off using something like a polar fleece, and that's what I'm going to be using now. So place your fabric over the outline and your solvy topper as well if you need it, and then tape it in place. And then you're going to pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 8 to secure it. Now we're going to trim away the excess of fabric from around the edge of the stitch line, taking care of course not to cut our stitches. And these scissors absolutely hate polar fleece, so I'm going to use some different ones. Making sure that you've got your thread colour for the bunny loaded into your machine. You're now going to stitch round number 10. I'm going to stay with the grey so that you can see the stitching. Next is the placement outline for his tail. So we're now going to stitch round number 10. We're now going to place our fabric for his tail over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 11 to secure it. Trim away the excess fabric from around the edge of the stitch line, taking care not to cut the stitches. We're now going to pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 12, and that's going to zigzag around the raw edge of the tail. Again, I'm staying with the grey so that you can see my stitching. Load your thread colour for the satin stitching around his tail into your machine, and then stitch round number 13, and I'm going with white. Load your thread colour for the pads of his feet into your machine, and then stitch round number 15, and I'm going with pink. Load your thread colour for the satin stitching around his body and feet into your machine, and then stitch round number 15, and I'm going with white for this. Load your thread colour for the stalks of the flowers into your machine, and then stitch round number 16, and I'm going with the dark green. Load your thread colour for the centres of the flowers into your machine, and then stitch round number 17, and I'm going with yellow. So this is what we've got so far, and next we're going to be stitching the petals for our flowers, but for that you're going to want a matching bobbin, because if on the back of yours it's all white, as is mine, you're going to be wanting your thread to stand out from the rest, and that's because we're going to be fringing our flowers, and that means cutting our threads, and we want to be able to see what we're doing. So load your matching bobbin and thread colour for the petals of the flowers into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 20, and I'm going with purple for this. Load your thread colour for the birds into your machine, and then stitch round number 19, and I'm going with dark grey. Before we go any further, you might want to swap your bobbin thread back to a more neutral colour. I've loaded white back into my machine. Then after that we're going to be stitching the sun, so load your thread colour, your top thread colour for the sun into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 20, and that's going to give you your placement outline for the sun fabric. I've put yellow into my machine. Place your fabric for the sun over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 21 to secure it. Trim away the excess fabric from around the edge of the stitching of the sun, taking care not to cut your stitches. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 22, and that's going to zigzag the raw edges of the fabric of the sun. Making sure that you've got your thread colour for the satin stitching around the sun loaded into your machine, you're now going to stitch round number 23, and I'm staying with yellow. We're now going to fringe our flowers, and this is going to be your bravery test because it involves cutting stitches. I'd like to point out that these flowers have been designed to be cut. You can't just go around cutting any old satin stitching. So you're going to turn your hoop over, and we always do this from the back of the hoop, and we're going to cut through the satin stitching on the back of our hoop around the flowers, taking care not to cut anything underneath, such as the stabilizer or anything like that. So take a small pair of sharp pointed scissors, slip it underneath the satin stitching, and then snip. You're going to do that all the way round on both flowers. So you should now be able to part the thread and just see your stabilizer underneath. And when you come over the stalks, because the stalks, the stitching's going acrossways, you're not going to get your scissors caught in the threads there, so you don't have to worry about that. And we're now going to do the same on the other side. I think I've got all the stitches, and then this is the fun bit. Just take your scissors and just gently scrape them on your stitching, and that will lift the stitches. If you've got any that are stuck, it's because you haven't cut through the threads. So just turn your hoop over again and trim through the threads that haven't been cut. Okay, and we're going to fluff this up. If you've got any straggling threads that are a bit long, just trim them down. And you don't have to worry about them coming unstitched, because that little line of stitching on the inside here is what's stopping that from happening. Let's clean up a little bit. And now we can do the same with the other. Okay, so next what we're going to do is push the fringing over towards the centre of our bunting and tape it in place, because we don't want it getting in the way of the borders of it. So I'm just going to take some masking tape, pull that over and tape it in place like that. That way the fringing isn't going to catch in the edging. And the same on the other side. Clean this up properly before I stitch any further, and then I'll be back. So I've cleaned this all up and my flowers are taped out of the way. So we're now going to turn our hoop over, place the backing fabric over the outline and tape it in place. Load your matching bobbin and thread colour for the satin stitch border of your bunting into your machine, and I'm going with hot pink, and then stitch round number 24. We're now going to trim out the fabric and batting, both back and front of the hoop, from the eyelets. So on the back you just want to cut through, make a slip into the fabric. So take your stitch unpicker, push it through the fabric and make a little slit. Make sure that you don't cut into the stabilizer below, and you're going to do that on both sides. You can actually feel where to stop if you take your time and are careful, and do the same on the front, just through the fabric And we're now going to trim out this area for our eyelets. So just slip your scissors underneath and trim around to clear the fabric. And we're also going to trim away the excess fabric from around the edge of the the border. And we're now going to do the same on the front, but this time we need to remove both the fabric and the batting from inside, again leaving the stabiliser. Make sure that you clear all the batting out of here, otherwise you're going to get fuzzy bits poking through your satin stitching. I think I've got them all, and we're now going to trim around the edge here. Take care not to cut your stitches, of course. I'm now going to stitch round number 25, and that's going to do the zigzag stitching of the raw edges around the edge of the bunting and the eyelets. We're now going to stitch round number 26, and that's going to do the satin stitching around the eyelets and our border. Now that all the stitching's done, we can free this from the hoop. So turn your hoop over and cut around the edge, taking care not to cut your stitches. All that remains for us to do now is to dissolve the excess stabiliser from around the eyelets and the edges. So take a cotton bud and some warm water, dip it in and just wipe to dissolve it. And I've got a few fibres that I was telling you about earlier, and I'm just going to trim them out. It's just the remains of the batting. It's not easy to see them sometimes. You'll do a better job than I will. Okay, so we're now going to take off the tape. Fluff up our flowers again. And that's our bunting panel completed. What colour are you going to do your flowers? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new videos as soon as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's always lots of ideas, help and inspiration there for everybody. And thank you very much for joining me. You'll find a link to this design in the video description below, along with lots of other information such as where I get my supplies and discount codes for you as well. Take care, and I'll see you next time.